Good evening and welcome to February 9th, 2021 budget. You know what?
Mute us. There you go. Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, again, thank you for joining us for the February 9th, 2021 budget workshop and regular board meeting. Would you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Budget workshop and regular meeting of the Kings Park Board of Education. Please be advised that this meeting is being recorded. We have a presentation tonight, our budget workshop. Dr. Egan.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I am going to share my screen. And with a little bit of luck, you're looking at our budget presentation. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the second draft of the budget. It's actually the third budget workshop presentation. And I am going to tag team with my assistant superintendent for business, Mrs. Mann, who's going to get us started off.
Great. Good evening, everybody. So as Dr. Egan mentioned, tonight is our third budget workshop. We started in December with our roll forward budget. And then in January, we had our first draft budget, and here we are tonight with our second draft budget. So with each budget workshop, we get a clearer picture and more information to know exactly where we stand. So what has changed since our last budget workshop in January? Retirements are now factored into the budget. We had a number of retirements come in. We had 8 teacher retirements, 2 custodial retirements, and 3 aides. So all of the savings that are represented with those retirements are now reflected in the budget. We also received our TRS contribution rate for the 21-22 school year, and that is a rate of 9.8%. That is an increase from our current rate of 9.53%, but when we were given a range of 9.5% to 10%, we had 10% built into the budget. So that's a little bit of a savings as well from our January presentation. Next slide. So where we are tonight is our current budget that we are living in right now in the 2021 school year is $96,510,404. Our second draft budget for 21-22 is coming in at $98,409,753. That's an increase of under 2% at 1.97%. Our revenue projections right now is only at $97,572,826. Within that revenue number, there's a tax levy increase of 2.61%. You might recall in January, we were showing a 3.0%. That's because we had some changes within our calculation. We are going to take a break from bus purchases in 21-22. So that brings down our levy a little bit there to 2.61%. So we do still have a budget gap tonight of $836,927. That's a significant increase of the 1.6 million we were at just at our last budget workshop, but it is still a number that we have to tackle over the next few budget workshops. So this 21-22 budget development cycle is the most difficult we've had in a number of years. CPI was under 2%. We're facing a pandemic. There's a lot going into this budget that we haven't had to deal with. So throughout that, our focus is ensuring a safe and secure environment for our students. We want to support and preserve technology, health and safety, especially mental health, and our extracurricular activities such as music, sports, and clubs. Next slide. This slide you'll remember from our last workshop. For the most part, it is unchanged. This is everything that makes up that revenue projection with the detail of state aid, interest, fund balance, reserves, and tax levy. So the only item, I won't bore you going through every line again, the only line that changed is the tax levy line. at the 2.61% number. Our state aid, we're hoping that'll be an increase when we find the legislative budget at the end of March, beginning of April. Next slide. So at this time, we have a better idea. We had some questions answered from our January workshop, but we still have a number of outstanding items, both on the expenditure and revenue side. On the expenditure side, kindergarten registration, that process is undergoing, and we currently are estimated at our current 2021 levels. So as that process moves forward, we'll get a feel for exactly what our needs are there. There's also potential additional considerations as we go through the budget development cycle, maybe some needs we don't need anymore, or maybe there's things that come up. So it is a ever evolving process. Our health insurance costs, I mentioned this at the last workshop that we don't know our 2022 rates until December of 2021. But as 2021 goes on, we can get a better feel, a better picture of what we can estimate for those projected increases, especially once we maybe get the first quarter under our belt. So by the end of March, beginning of April, maybe we can hopefully see some savings in that number. And then the biggest question is, what are our schools going to look like in September of 2021? You know, we don't have a crystal ball, but we need to see how are things going with vaccines and rates, and get our best guess of what we think it's going to look like and what that impact is going to have on our staffing needs and resources that we would need related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide. On the revenue side, the two biggest pieces there are our tax levy and our state aid. So tax levy, as you saw how we changed from last budget workshop to this budget workshop, when we have some budgetary decisions, that does play into the levy percentage. So anything that we make a decision there could potentially change that. If we had bus purchases, or if we perhaps applied some more reserves. So I think we're pretty good there, but it could be slight adjustments. As far as state aid, we are currently working from the governor's budget proposal, and typically the legislative proposal comes in with a little more aid than the executive budget. So we are optimistically awaiting the legislative budget, which comes in the end of March, beginning of April. Next slide. So our overall status is that we still have a few important variables out there. While we have those items that we still need to nail down, our goal is to propose a tax levy increase within the tax cap limitations, as we always have done, maintain the curriculum and programs that support the district's mission, and maintain our extracurricular activities, art, music, and sports. Next slide. So we are, as of tonight, still showing a gap of $836,927. So how do we close that gap? It is a continual effort over the next month or two, where we find out more information. We continue to review our expenditures and look for additional efficiencies. We see if we will receive any additional state aid. We evaluate our amount of applied fund balance and reserves, see if we perhaps start to tap into some reserves, keeping in mind that while this year is going to be difficult, we are almost certain next year is going to be even more difficult. So we need to conservatively approach that. And it really is a cyclical process, and we hope the gap will continue to decrease. We continue to go through literally line by line in the budget and see where we have areas that we can get a better picture and shave off. And it's a cyclical process, and we will get there. Next slide. At this point, I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Egan, and he's going to go through some past and current efficiencies that the district has accomplished.
Thank you, Mrs. Meehan. I just wanted to emphasize this evening that over the last 6.5 years, we've really tried to maximize efficiencies. We've gone green in a lot of areas. We've fully implemented an energy performance contract, EPC2. We currently have a third EPC that we're working on, which will bring solar to most of our rooftops in Kings Park. That project has been relatively stuck at the state aid level, awaiting final approval with them since early fall. We're awaiting an update on the status of that, but we are hopeful that we're going to be able to break ground later this spring. Certainly solar will help us to save money on electric bills moving forward. We've installed more efficient boilers in our buildings. We have the new windows at William T. Rogers that make that building so much more heat efficient. We've purchased primarily propane large buses, which we've seen a cost savings in gas on that end. And the board saw when we looked at the school budgets, the last workshop, that we've really cut back in paper and postage, and especially in this day and age of Google, where a significant number of worksheets and things of that nature can be shared with students through Google. We've seen a large decrease in our paper. Also some personnel efficiencies and reductions as our class size and enrollment has come down. We did a transportation study years back. We've continued to refinance existing debt as interest rates have dropped, and we continue to go out to market for various insurance and medical benefits to ensure that we have the best rates and can save money in those areas. So to sum up where we are today, we're currently looking at expenditures of a little bit more than 98 million, 98.4 million. And by the end of the budget preparation process, we need to have revenues that are going to equal the amount on the left. The difficulty is that the levy is capped thanks to the tax cap, and our state aid package won't be well known until on or about April 1st. We know that the state has some significant financial issues themselves. And as you might have read, it was on the front page of Newsday today, there are 50 of the approximately 120 districts on Long Island that are currently slated to receive less state aid next year than they received this year. Kings Park happens to be one of those school districts where our state aid currently is going down, which obviously is not helpful. And that leaves us with a gap that's kind of uncomfortable, about $835,000 that we're going to look to close over the coming budget development workshops. So when we reconvene in March, we're going to be taking a look at class size and staffing and some other odds and ends. Obviously, class size and staffing is the biggest piece of that discussion that night. So we'll look carefully on March 2nd. And we have some dates after March 2nd. We come back on the 16th and we revisit what we need to in terms of staffing and sometimes retweak things a little bit. Ultimately adopting the budget April 13th after we know our complete aid package from the state. We'll hold a budget hearing on May 11th and then obviously the budget vote on May 18th. Tonight we have 4 items for additional discussion. We have four little mini presentations in those areas. And the first of which is athletics. And I did see Mr. Denniston, our athletic director, on the meeting earlier. And Mr. Denniston, if you could take it away, that would be greatly appreciated.
All right, great. Thank you, Dr. Egan. Good evening, everyone. All right, so we're going to take a look at the athletic program and the athletic proposed budget for next year. First, we're going to start off with some points of pride. I highlighted 4 things that we are very proud of in our athletic program. The first being Scholar Athlete Awards. Last year, 1920 school year, we were a NISFA School of Excellence. We had nearly all of our varsity teams get the Scholar Athlete Award. I'm very proud of that. And you'll see on one of the future slides, we have a nice 5-year history going of the Scholar Athlete Award. This past year, we had 31 class of 2020 graduates go on to commit to play college athletics. Great number. It's great to see them sign and commit, go on to the college level. 25 students this past year earned the Suffolk County Gold Key Award. That is an award for sports participation. You must compete in 8 sports seasons, at least 8 sports seasons over your 10th, 11th, and 12th grade year. So you have 9 seasons. These individuals competed in at least 8 of those 9. And News 12 Scholar Athletes, if you've seen this program, very selective, very prestigious. We actually have a good history here of getting our students recognized. We've had a couple past winners. We actually have 2 nominees this year. So hopefully we'll get the call from News 12. It's a quick little snapshot, points of pride. All right, next slide. All right, so here's just a summary of the proposed budget for next year. As you can see, first off, there is going to be a recommendation for a decrease overall. So we really looked at the budget and looked at line by line and saw that we could trim a little bit and still run an effective program. The first item I had listed there was equipment. As you can see, we are proposing to go down $1,000. Not a huge overall decrease, not going to have a huge impact. We're still going to be able to purchase a good amount of equipment. Within that money, we're looking to get some more AEDs for our programs. We are looking to get some weight room equipment and some other sports-specific equipment. Officials fees at the middle school level is going down, and I'll get to that in a minute in the bottom. So that's going to be a decrease. Dues and membership at the high school level is one of the budget items that's going to be frozen. For the most part, across the board, this budget is maintaining or a slight decrease. Athletic supplies, again, this is a very important line item, and we're going to keep that fairly consistent, just down a little bit, 1%. It's actually $500 decrease, but also within that $4,300 proposed number, we'll be able to fully fund all of our teams, and we'll be at that money is used for our supplies. It's used for uniforms to keep the teams running and looking good. Athletic awards is going to go down slightly. This money is primarily used 3 times a year for our sports awards and also for items throughout the building. One of the things that we're doing right now at the high school is the showcases. So we use that money to help lively up the school. So overall, as a budget proposal, it's a decrease of $3,109. Overall, 1.33% decrease. So slight decrease, but also I feel comfortable and confident that even with the decrease, that we'll be able to continue running an effective athletic program. I am making 2 recommendations for the athletic program for 2021-2022. The first being the discontinuation of the 2nd middle school baseball and softball teams. And that is based on a past couple of year history of student interest and just looking as an overall program. We would still have the 1 middle school baseball, 1 middle school softball teams, which is also consistent overall with the middle school athletic program. I'm also making a recommendation to restore the high school baseball and softball varsity assistant coaches. Those positions were eliminated from the budget back in 2014. We have looked at this item for a couple of years, and I feel that this could be the year, next year, to restore those those positions. Okay, next slide. All right, so this budget supports all current sport offerings. So we are bringing back all sports next year for the budget. Again, I talked about supplies. That was definitely a necessity. So we are going to supply all of our teams with what they need. Every year we do purchase new uniforms for many of our teams, high school and middle school level. So we'll look to do that I would say on average, there's about 7 to 8 teams a year. And when you do the math, like 5 or 6 years to cycle all the way through. Very important is reconditioning. So we're keeping the money in that code. That wasn't on the summary slide, but we're keeping the money, enough money in there to recondition equipment and uniforms. And one of the items that I did list was funding for athletic awards. So as I mentioned earlier, slight decrease overall, but at the same time, will provide us the ability to run what is expected of the program. And as I mentioned earlier, that's our 5-year history of Scholar Athlete Awards. We started off in 2015, first time in school history, School of Distinction. That's every varsity team getting the Scholar Athlete Award, and it's continued up until now, and we're back now playing. So the Scholar Athlete program is back running. So we're going to continue that. And that is the athletic proposed budget.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Denniston. I believe, Mr. Craig, you're gonna pick up now?
Yep, right here, Dr. Egan. Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to take you through the next 3 budget areas: extracurricular, buildings and grounds, and transportation. So next slide. So points of pride, certainly very proud of our club offerings here in Kings Park. We have 85 clubs offered district-wide, 40 at Kings Park High School, 19 at the middle school, 16 at RJO, and 10 at Parkview and Fort Salonga. In addition, certainly very proud of our club advisors this year. With the pandemic, we've been able to offer all of our clubs, some in person, some virtually, some hybrid. So very proud that our students still had a chance to engage in all our club offerings as we went through what has been a very unique school year. Next slide. We do have one club proposal for next school year. So this is a club we've been looking to add at Kings Park High School for the past couple of years. So it's a computer science club. Essentially, it's a coding club. As you can see, the description on the PowerPoint allows our students to hone their skills in coding, programming, explore various coding languages such as Python and JavaScript. In addition, the coding club also looks to compete in several competitions such as the Long Island Hackathon, and also kind of work in collaboration with our robotics club at Kings Park High School as well. We have a similar club at William T. Rogers Middle School, which has been very popular. So in addition, this year we tapped one of our high school teachers who has experience and an affinity for this type of club. We've been running it as a pilot program for this school year with strong interest. So this is the one new club proposal for next school year. Next slide. So with the addition of that one club, just a slight increase of 1.26% for our budget summary. Next slide. And just a summary, the budget supports, as noted earlier by Ms. Meehan, continued offering of all our clubs at all our schools, and the addition of that one new club proposal at Kings Park High School. Next slide. Next, we have buildings and grounds. So points of pride, our custodial, maintenance, and ground staff, certainly key to reopening our schools this past year. As we went through the summer preparing for our reopening, one of the main priorities was the safety of our students and staff. Also, as you can see, the 3 pictures on the PowerPoint, to bring all students in person every day at our schools, specifically RGO, we had to create more classroom space. So you can see that we added some additional classrooms at RJO, converted some of the museum rooms into classrooms. You can also see the Lexan shields at the desks put in place for safety as well. Our maintenance staff actually created an assembly line over the summer, cutting the Lexan, shaping it, putting it on each desk. That saved the district a substantial amount of money to make that in-house. In addition, we had to create a safety plan as far as disinfecting, fogging our classrooms. A lot of supplies were purchased as well. So these three groups of custodial, maintenance, and grounds did an outstanding job in preparing our schools for this school year. Next slide. So looking at a few lines on the buildings and grounds, you will see that there is a substantial increase on custodial supplies of about 50%. We probably, that line was really used the most as we had to reopen and continue to keep our schools open. That line was really taxed a lot. So we had to purchase disposable masks, gloves, cloth masks for students and staff, disinfectant, hand sanitizer, fogging machine. So that's why we had spent that entire budget halfway through the school year. So looking towards next year, and as noted earlier, not knowing what next year will be, we're looking to make the increase in that line so we can safely stay open next school year. The BOCES telephone network, we continue to identify lines in district we are not using, looking through our contract at BOCES, so a lower line for a BOCES telephone network. Security maintenance, that's just an increase. That's really specific to our cameras in district. So we do have cameras at all our buildings that monitor our building space for our students and staff. So that really is showing the addition of some additional cameras. It also encompasses the licensing fees through LICN for our cameras as well. And then as noted earlier by Dr. Egan, heating and electric is down. Those are due to some of the efficiencies that we've been able to accomplish with the EPC work. And then lastly, we have our building repair line, which is remaining neutral at $415,000. And that line is always to kind of go hand in hand with our bond work to ensure that we are getting work done throughout our buildings, and also always identifying some areas that are in need of repair as well. So there is an increase of 12.37% on the buildings and grounds budget summary. Next slide. So this budget supports certainly additional work throughout the district. You can see there's a few projects on there. Although we've done a lot of ceiling and floor work through the bond, we do have some additional work to do. So those are some ceilings at Kings Park High School, a garage door that needs to be fixed at the high school. We also want to put a large 16-foot fence on the field, a lacrosse field and soccer field that runs along 25A at Kings Park High School. This way, no more lacrosse balls will hit cars driving down 25A. In addition, you see the big driver on this budget was really the increase in custodial supplies, wipes, masks, sanitizer, disinfectant. Those items we want to make sure that we have an abundance of as we look to stay open in the fall of next year. Next slide. Next, we have transportation. So looking at our points of pride, next slide. As always, a point of pride for transportation is being certainly prideful of our own transportation staff. Many schools contract out to outside companies. We have our own bus fleet, our own staff. Many of our staff, drivers, mechanics, reside in Kings Park. They know the students and families well, so we're very proud of that. Similar to the other slides, proud of our safe reopening. The drivers and mechanics did a great job in transporting our students to school, creating appropriate spacing in our buses, ensuring safety, fogging and disinfecting buses in between our afternoon and evening routes. So just a great job there. And as always, at our bus safety contest, I think we had the opportunity to recognize those winners back in December, continuing to promote bus safety with our students in our schools. So a nice job there. Next slide. So for looking at a couple of the budget summary lines, an increase for the gas and propane, that's more of a conservative estimate, just not knowing what gas and propane prices will be in the upcoming year. So that's just there as a conservative number. So a slight increase there. You will see an increase on bus repairs of about 22%. So that really is, we have a few of our older buses in need of repair, specifically undercarriage repair. So that's why that line has been increased. We do have a decrease in tires and auto parts, and then a slight increase again in contract transportation. We do contract out some of our routes to Huntington Coach, and those are our students who go to outside placements, and we need to utilize an outside contractor to transport those students. And this increase is due to some contractual obligations, in addition some additional routes for next school year. So overall, though, you see a decrease of 8.63, and that is mostly because we are not purchasing any new buses for next school year, as noted by Ms. Meehan earlier in the presentation. Next slide. So just a quick update of what our transportation fleet looks like as far as buses and vans. We've actually done a lot of work in this area over the past 5 years, as the board is well aware. Typically, we've been purchasing 2 and 3 new buses and vans each year. That's why we now have 32 buses and vans within the 0 to 10 years on the newer end. We have about 10 buses in the 11 to 15 range, and still about 22 buses in the 16 to 20 year range for our 64 total buses. That's really where that repair money goes to those older buses that need some undercarriage repair for next year. Next slide. So this budget will support, safely transporting our students. As noted earlier, we are taking a 1-year break from purchasing any new buses and vans, as noted earlier. That will help with the tax levy and the budget overall. But we have added some of the repair costs so we can keep those older buses working properly to transport our students for next year. And that's the budget for transportation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Craig.
Thank you, Dr. Egan, for that presentation. Does anyone on the board have any questions?
I'll go a couple of things. One, just thank everybody for the presentations. I don't think we could have planned it or worked it out any better to have buildings and grounds in your office cleaning as we were talking about the buildings and grounds budget, if anybody caught that. So well done. But just a shout out to them too. This has been for all of our staff and teachers, it's been a difficult year, and they've really enabled us to be in school. And our thanks go out to all of our staff. Question for Mr. Deniston on the middle school teams and the proposal on the second baseball and softball teams. Based on student interest, as you know, it's something that I've been involved. Do we think that'll leave us in terms of participation? Will they be no cut teams or limited cut teams? What would our expectation be?
Yeah, good question, Mr. Bianco. I think when we looked at it, obviously you go down from 2 teams to 1 team. It was really a thought of just watching, obviously, enrollment go down, watching the numbers go down. For example, softball, number-wise is a little definitely lower than baseball. They've been on the path for 1 team now for 2 to 3 years. Baseball has gone down as well. So when we looked at it, if you have the 1 team compared to the 2 teams, yeah, I think you would look to maximize that roster and try to keep the interest as much as you can, obviously safely done within 1 team.
Great, thank you. As you know, it was important to the community, took that up as an initiative, and we picked it up as a board. Really feeling that kids' first experience with any type of school activity, athletics, music, otherwise, participation is really important to give them that feeling of belonging and confidence before they get to high school. and get into a more competitive environment. So I know we've spoken about it before. I know the numbers are headed in that direction. So just want to make sure that we're still giving opportunities to most, if not all, the kids that are interested. So thank you on the assistant coaches. I know we've talked about that as well. So I'm happy to see certainly some progress in that area. I think that's a great thing, and those are sports with big rosters. So I think that's as good a place to start as any. So thank you for that.
Although we still have a deficit, a gap to look out. So I know we have a couple weeks of looking into it. I know our business office will work diligently along with Dr. Egan. And although we've added some, I think they're great ads. We really have to be mindful that we still have a gap. So thank you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Egan. And as Mrs. Ford said, we have a lot of work still to do on this budget. That's still a big gap, but it's a lot better than it was at our last presentation. So
absolutely.
Yes, thank you, everyone. All right, we will move on to public comments. The Board of Education will hear public comments that address voting items on tonight's agenda only at this time. Speakers must first state their first and last names to the district clerk and then address their comments to the board. Comments by any individual may not exceed 3 minutes. A visible timer will be used to monitor this time limit. The public comment sections of this meeting will not exceed 30 minutes in total. In fairness to all, speakers who exceed the 3-minute limit and who do not finish when asked will be muted. Due to confidentiality concerns, the board does not permit speakers to raise issues concerning a specific student or a specific personnel matter. Such concerns should be presented to the superintendent after the board. I would also like to add that our public comment session is really not a time for a back and forth conversation. So if you have a question that we can answer in just a few words, we will. That deserves a much more detailed answer. We will ask you to email the board and we will get back to you. And your question and answer will be posted to our website so everyone can view it. Okay, is there anyone that has any public comments that have to do with voting agenda items only at this time? Please raise your hand or use your icon. So I am not seeing anybody. If there is someone and we're missing you, please just speak out. Okay. All right, so we will move on to our consent agenda. Approval of the minutes of the January 26, 2021 budget workshop and regular meeting. I will make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes of the February 1st, 2021 special meeting. I will make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is an MOA with CSEA for COVID-19 testing. Dr. Egan.
This MOA with the CSEA establishes a mechanism to pay our health office staff to perform the COVID-19 required testing for high-risk athletes and coaches.
Thank you, Dr. Egan. Any questions from the board? I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the Board of Education approves the attached memorandum of agreement, MOA, with the CSEA for COVID-19 testing and gives the board president and superintendent agreement. Next is the approval of the 2021-2022 calendar. Dr. Egan.
Okay, we've been talking about next year's calendar for several board meetings at this point. We were waiting for one important thing to happen from the state, which is that the state establishes the last day of school, which the state refers to as rating day. So most of us think of it as the last day of school. State calls it rating day. They finally did establish that day as Friday, June 24th. So at this point, I'm recommending the calendar that we've looked at for the last couple of meetings. It was originally draft B, and it was the only calendar that we looked at the January meeting. It's kind of a unique calendar in that Rosh Hashanah is very early next year. So the first day of school would not be until September 9th. It does offer us the opportunity to be off the day before Thanksgiving, which is a day that I know our staff and the community really appreciate, especially those we hope to be able to travel far and wide by next Thanksgiving, and that will allow everybody to do that. We get a typical holiday break for New Year's. January looks very typical. February looks very typical. March is long, as it always is in 2022. The April vacation, we would hope to be able to maintain. And one do for the current year, which we actually used once, is the ability to go remote if we need multiple snow days. So there is one very clear snow day built into the calendar, which is the Friday before Memorial Day break. But we also have a couple of snow days built in over the spring break, but we would hope to not have to use them, with the potential to be able to go remote should the state allow us to do that next year. May and June are fairly typical, although the state has designated a new day in the calendar where we can't have school. In June of 2022, Juneteenth is on a Sunday, and we are required to recognize it on Monday, June 20th. So there would be no school on Monday, June 20th of 2022. And that is the draft recommended calendar.
And also in this calendar, there is school on election day.
Correct. Correct. It'll be an odd election year. Not odd as in not normal, but odd as in it's 2021. So we do not anticipate a lot of voting on election day. The way our schools are set up, we can completely isolate where people vote, and we feel we can do that safely, and we have done that before.
Well, I think that it's a good calendar considering the challenge that we had in September, school starting so late. Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Yes, that too. Okay, I will make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the Board of Education approves the attached 2021-2022 calendar. Next is the second reading and adoption of the revised policy number 3280, facilities use. Dr. Egan.
Okay, it's the second reading of policy 3280. It takes 2 readings of a policy to make an update. The origin of the recommended update is fine tuning and making it clear in the district policy that certain outdoor facilities cannot be used during the school day. We did have an issue at one of our buildings where we had an older individual who was on campus multiple times, and in looking at our policy, we realized that it doesn't explicitly say anywhere that certain areas, including playgrounds and tracks and things of that nature, can't simply be used during the school day when students may be outside and using them. So a paragraph was added to our existing policy that firms that up.
Are there any questions from the board? Thank you, Dr. Egan. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Resolved that the Board of Education approves the second reading and adoption of the revised policy number 3280, facilities use. Next is notice of subdivision.
Okay, so from time to time, the district is notified of subdivisions that fall within the Kings Park boundaries. So this is another example of such a subdivision. The district doesn't take a stance one way or the other on the subdivision. This is only for informational purposes only. It's a 2-lot subdivision along Fort Salonga Road, also known as 25A. It's right off of Callahan's Road, adjacent to the golf course. My understanding is it's again a 2-lot subdivision. One of the lots is zoned R21 and the second lot is zoned R43. If you would like a little bit more information about this subdivision, the originals are kept with our district clerk, and you're more than welcome to make an appointment to come up and view them should you so wish to do so.
Thank you, Dr. Egan. Any questions from the board? So next is personnel schedule. Mr. Craig.
Good evening again. For the personnel schedule, we do have some retirements for both instructional and non-instructional staff. For our teachers, Mary Castellano at Parkview. We then have Kathy Cuff, Joan Hall, and Maria Irachi, all elementary teachers at RJO. And for our non-instructional staff, Annette McHale, teacher aide at Fort Salonga, and Ann Okapinti, library aide at Parkview and Fort Salonga. So we wish all those folks well in their retirement, and we will have the opportunity to recognize them at our May board meeting. So certainly we wish them well. One other item of note on the personnel schedule, you will see the appointment of intramurals at William T. Rogers Middle School. So that is for with middle school winter sports not occurring. This is an opportunity for those middle school athletes to engage in intramurals for the winter months, and those were prepared by Mr. Dennison, our athletic director. And that is the personnel schedule for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Craig, and congratulations and best wishes to all of our retirees. You will be missed, and hopefully you'll be starting your journey on the next chapter of your lives, and we wish you well.
I would echo congratulations and thanks to all the retirees tonight and others that we've acknowledged before. Thank you for all of your time and dedication. And also a quick shout out, many of our programs, we talked about extracurriculars and athletics tonight, and we lean heavily often on volunteers. And one of our favorite and most often volunteered persons, Kenny Jones, was on the schedule tonight, as many people know very well. So just a shout out to Kenny for all of his love and passion for Kings Park athletics.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is approval of the revised non-contract pay rates for the 2020-2021 school year. Mr. Craig.
So this is just to add one addition to our non-contract pay rates, and that would be COVID-19 testing. So by approving this, this will give us a pay rate for our substitute nurses to assist in the COVID-19 testing that is required for our high-risk athletes to participate in sports.
I will make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the Board of Education approves the attached revised non-contract pay rates for the 2020-2021 school year. Acceptance of recommendation to add verified new vendors to the approved district vendor list. As per district policy, all vendors must be approved by the board before any payment can be made. I will make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the Board of Education accepts the recommendation to add verified new vendors to the approved district vendor list per the attached documentation. Next is authorization to sign contracts with service providers for the 2020-2021 school year. Dr. Colby Rooney.
Good evening. The following agreements will provide transition support and programmatic services for students with disabilities within the Kings Park Central School District.
Thank you, Dr. Colby Rooney. Any questions from the board? I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education gives the board president permission to sign the attached contracts with the following service providers for the 2020-2021 school year: Abilities Inc., Hill Hollow Hills Central School District, and Hop Hop Public Schools. Next is acceptance of CSE meeting recommendations. Dr. Colby Rooney.
Yes, the attached will include recommendations from Committee on Special Education meetings that were held between the dates of January 6th through January 26th.
Thank you, Dr. Colby Rooney.
Thank you.
Question from the board? I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Approve the attached individualized educational programs, IEPs, from January 6, 2021 to January 26, 2021, 23 in total. The next is authorization to send letter to elected officials and health department for updated COVID-19 guidance. Dr. Egan.
Okay, I want to personally thank the Board of Education for their incredible work and research on this topic. The board has worked over the last several days to put a very well-written letter together that they plan on sending to elected officials and health department officials. The reason being there have been recent changes in COVID guidance regarding sports, but most of the guidance that the state and the health department and the CDC put together to recommend for districts for reopening is now more than 6 months old and used for reopening back in July and August, which has left the board and myself and many members of the community very frustrated. So again, I'd like to thank the board for all of the efforts that they've spent over the last several days authoring this very well-written letter.
Thank you, Dr. Egan. We want to thank you for your contribution to the letter also. It certainly was a united effort, yes. So I will make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Whereas in the spring of 2020, New York State were directed to close and provide only remote learning for students. And whereas over the summer of 2020, schools were required to produce reopening plans to the state that abided by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, and New York State Department of Health guidance. And whereas superintendents were required to certify these plans, which included over 90 specific attestation requirements, including but not limited to mask wearing, cleaning and sanitizing, busing, and social distancing. And whereas several months have now passed since the original school reentry guidance was produced. And whereas on January 22nd, 2021, Governor Andrew Cuomo announced that high-risk sports may resume in New York State, subject to the approval of the local health department. And whereas on January 25th, 2021, Suffolk County announced a plan for high-risk sports to resume, including weekly mandatory COVID-19 testing for athletes and coaches. And whereas the change specific to sports, which does not include updated guidance for instruction or extra and co-curricular activities like music and theater, has generated significant discussion, confusion, and concern in our community. And whereas the Kings Park Central School District desires to urge our county and state elected officials and health department officials to review and potentially update the existing guidance for instruction or extra and co-curricular activities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Kings Park Central School District Board of Education calls upon our county and state elected officials and health department officials to perform this task, and be it further resolved that the Kings Park Central School District Board and Superintendent permission to sign a letter and clearly communicate this request with county and state elected officials and health department officials. Okay, so if you will just indulge me for a few minutes, I would like to read the letter that we are going to send to Governor Cuomo, Dr. Zucker, who is the Commissioner of the New York State Department of Health, Suffolk County Executive Steve Bellone, Dr. Pickett, who is the Commissioner of the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, Dr. Walensky for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and Dr. Fauci in the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. This list of who we're sending the letter to with the addresses will be posted on the school website, as will the letter that I'm about to read. On behalf of the Kings Park community, our students, families, teachers, and staff, we are asking for your help. We are not public health experts. We specialize in education. Our expertise lies in teaching and learning, leadership, and school district management. To date, we have diligently adhered to Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, New York State Department of Health guidelines, including the recommended minimum 6 feet of distancing in those spaces and 12 feet of separation between students while singing, playing wind instruments, or in physical education classes. However, most of these guidelines date back to last August when we prepared for reopening. Much has evolved since that time in our collective understanding of the virus, its ability to spread, and its impact on members of our community. More data exists in terms of the impact these guidelines have on instructional well-being, including their mental health. Additionally, more time has passed to study the efficacy of alternative models and requirements being used in other states and countries. We write to you today to implore you to review, with guidance from the New York State Department of Health, the current research on the transmission of COVID-19, particularly as it relates to physical distancing requirements, which have a significant impact on busing, lunch, instructional spaces, and music instruction. As we enter the 11th month of this pandemic, all we are asking is that guidance be reviewed to ensure that it is still aligned with the science of this virus. This will best ensure that our practices are updated and current, and that we can safely continue along the path to a full reopening of our schools. Status quo needs to be a choice. It cannot be a default. The Kings Park Central School District has provided in-class learning for all K through 5 students 5 days per week since September. The Kings Park Central School District, however, has been prevented from providing the same in-class experience for grades 6 through 12 due to various New York State and Suffolk County guidelines. The social distancing guideline requiring 6 feet, and in some cases 12 feet of space, particularly affects 4 essential areas at the secondary level: transportation when traveling to and from schools, dining when students eat without a mask, instruction when classroom space is an issue, extracurricular activities that cannot be replicated virtually, such as musical performances, such as musical performances. There can be no debate that in-school learning opportunities have diminished and these questions need to be asked in hopes that we may enhance the learning experiences of our students. This review will enable the Kings Park Central School District and other school districts around New York State to provide coherent, up-to-date practices while affording parents with consistent, clear information. Thank you for your consideration of this request. So as I said, this letter will be posted to our website. We invite parents who wish to communicate their concerns to these politicians and you know, the Department of Health in New York State and the county to please write and support your views. And as I said, the addresses are posted on the website also. Okay. All right.
Thank you for reading this.
Thank you.
It's like, I don't know how teachers do it. It's very hard to talk that long with a mask on. Okay, so we are up to authorization to add organizations to the flyer distribution list for the 2020-2021 school year. As per district policy, all flyers must be approved by the board before email distribution. I will make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the organizations listed below receive approval by the Board of Education to be included in email distribution of flyers in the school district for the 2020-2021 school year. Suffolk County Education Foundation Tennis Varsity Preseason Prep. Okay, and now we are up to special reports and announcements from the superintendent, Dr. Egan.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. I have continued to send out daily COVID-19 updates for the community. We were fortunate that we did not have any cases last Friday. So on days where you don't hear from me, that was a very positive day for us, and that we did not have any additional reported cases. Just as a litmus test in terms of what things look like outside today, New York and in particular Long Island's rate does continue to drop. Unfortunately, Long Island continues to have the highest positivity rate in the state. Today we were 5.36 with Suffolk County slightly higher than Nassau County. That puts us slightly lower than we were right around Thanksgiving. So that's good. The numbers do continue to track downward. We're past the Super Bowl now, which was one of my concerns. I think the snow the other night might have kept people inside, which may help us. The last short-term hurdle that we're going to have is the week or two right after February break. So I do implore everybody to please continue to follow smart guidelines that have been set for us by the county and the state. I do want to see those numbers continue to track down in Kings Park. We just really need to be mindful and get through those weeks following February break and keep a close watch on that. We may actually get some updated guidance from the CDC this week. Dr. CDC, we'll see what additional guidance comes from that direction this week. One thing to be really mindful, and I won't read the whole statement, but she did make a statement last week. But what's interesting is the statement was on reopening. And, you know, been there, done that. We did that back in September, and we've been really successful with our reopening plan. But it's important to understand that there are still whole states that are on full remote right now. Maryland is a good example. There are whole areas of the country where students have not been back to school yet. They have not re-entered. And a lot of the guidance coming from the CDC has simply been upon getting those students in school that have not been in school for quite some time. Even if you venture a little to our west, we know that New York City schools were closed for periods of time, and we know in Westchester County, the Arlington School District and some other school districts were on remote for significant periods of time this school year. Hopefully we will get some guidance from the CDC soon regarding school districts that already reopened and have done a yeoman's job in staying open. I want to give a shout out to Mr. Deniston and our health office staff. Yesterday and today, they administered somewhere in the neighborhood of about 120 COVID-19 tests to our high-risk athletes and coaches. Every one of those tests, thank goodness, were negative. It took a whole team. It was quite a process. It was very well planned and organized. And I again, just wanted to thank Mr. Deniston and our health office staff, and of course, our coaches and our athletes. It's great to see our athletes back on the court. It's great to feel their energy in the gym. And I'm happy also that we have our weight room back open. So we were able to expand a little bit last week and this week, and we were able to do so successfully. And last but not least, with February break coming up, one of my concerns is we have a significant number of people students that attend our school every day who count on free and reduced price lunch and breakfast. We do have a sharing table that is in Kings Park now. It's right next to Ralph's on Main Street. It's a collaborative effort by the local Rotary Club, the town of Smithtown, the Kings Park Chamber, and the school district. We need volunteers. And if you look on our website, there's a link to how you can volunteer. It's super simple. Just pick a day of the week and some times where you think you might be available on a regular basis. It's a community-run table. So, you can jump right in and help organize. And if you think something's missing or we need something, just make it happen. It's a community table. There's a snow shovel there. We needed that this morning because we needed to get some snow off the roof of our little tent area. The two things that disappeared really quickly and we probably could use on a daily basis is produce and bread. So if you're able, when you go food shopping, just pick up some extra produce and bread. All the containers are labeled. You can just help yourself put the food in the containers, and somebody in need will certainly benefit from that. So thank you to all in the community that helped this great resource to come together. And I look forward to all the volunteers over February break so that we can keep that running. And that's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Egan. Anyone else have anything?
Yes, as usual. Number one, I have absolutely no comments directed at the groundhog. We're not even in speaking terms anymore. Second, have a great Valentine's Day. And third, Dr. Colby Rooney, it is great and heartwarming to see you tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin.
You're all set.
Next, we're back to public comments. The Board of Education will hear additional public comments. Please follow the procedures outlined for the public comment session earlier in this meeting. In addition, please note that the board will take no action at tonight's meeting. So if there are any public comments, please raise your hand or use your icon.
Michelle Torrey. Hi, Michelle Torrey. Just a very quick question. Maybe Dr. Egan could clarify, because I know there's been a lot of back and forth about some of the surrounding districts opening full-time K through 12. Could you differentiate the difference between why some of those other districts are going to be able to start doing that and why we aren't able to start doing that? Because I know there's probably some different, obviously of different demographics, different size of district. So maybe some clarification would help people feel more at ease to understand why Kings Park is kind of doing things the way they're doing things. So not as a criticism, just looking for clarification so that people maybe have a better understanding as to why we're working at the pace that we're working.
Yeah, great question, Mrs. Torrey, and I appreciate the opportunity to clarify, and certainly encourage you if you want to give me a call tomorrow. I can follow up in a lot more detail. But what I can tell you is that the district continues to evaluate what we're able to offer in terms of in-person learning. Nothing would make me happier than to be able to expand what we're currently offering. The thing that we alluded to earlier that is the greatest commodity is space, and that 6 feet of distancing, which is very clearly in the guidance from the Department of Health. That single variable makes certain functions in the school, and there were 4 functions that were listed in the letter that the board and I authored, very, very difficult. It should also be noted that, I believe both districts have indicated that, they're relatively tentative plans, and we are still watching what the virus does and cases in our various districts. So, I want to emphasize, we continue to look at this and to have meetings to analyze various data. But if we're going to run out of time, but if you give me, happy to go into a little bit more detail with you.
Rich Pace.
Hi, thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time. Appreciate being able to ask a question.
Okay.
Just
your name again, please.
Yeah, it's Rich Pace. Rich Pace. Yep. So just wanted to know if there's any plans to do some work on the varsity baseball field and the girls softball varsity field. Just take, there was no season last year. The fields have taken a beating, the infields have taken a beating. And just wondering if there's any chance we can get some clay in the fields and some work done with, some of the bigger machinery. We have a pretty good volunteer staff ready to go if, you guys are able to provide some of the materials for us like we did on Coach McDermott's field. Just wanted to see if that was in the plans.
Yeah, we can absolutely touch base, Mr. Pace, and work together to perform some work on those fields. We do have in the works a solar scoreboard for girls softball. And we did have a grant. It was a sizable grant that we were working on that may have dried up, but was in the works right before the pandemic that would have provided some funds for us to do some significant work on both fields. Unfortunately, that grant, I believe, was spearheaded by John Flanagan, who is no longer in office, and the state that was when the grant started. So we may have to do that work in-house, and we can certainly work together with our grounds crew and volunteers to freshen up that area.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's some other things outside of just the fields. There's some cosmetics in the dugouts and, the batting cage. There's just some things that we can do with a little bit of help from the school and really, shore up those fields and make them, representable for the town. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Understood. Why don't you give me a call and you know, maybe right before, right after February break. This way I have your phone number, and we can connect with grounds, and you know, once the snow melts, we can set up some work days and some ways we can collaborate on that.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll do that. Thank you, Dr. Egan.
You got it.
Thank you, Mr. Pace.
And I think all those baseball and softball players will look forward to playing in May and June instead of March and April this year, which will also
yeah, this year definitely.
Which will also help the fields considerably. But yeah, for all the sports and all our clubs, the local organizations have been a key to many things that we've been able to provide. So we appreciate that.
All right. Do we have any other questions? I am not seeing anyone. If we're missing you, please just speak out. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone. On to important dates. February 15th through February 19th is mid-winter recess and schools are closed. And March 2nd is the next budget workshop and Board of Education meeting at 7:30. So let's make a motion to adjourn into executive session for a personnel matter.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everyone. Thank you again.
All right.